Deconverted Man here. Today I'll be debating From the Grave to the Flame Ministries on the topic, is there empirical evidence and or repeatable tests and or logically coherent argument for the existence of God? My answer to all three of these is, as far as I'm aware, no. Of course, I can't speak to the things that I'm not aware of, so it is up to my opponent to present empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a logically coherent argument for the existence of God. If he is able to do so, then not only would he win this debate, but potentially he would win some other prizes as well, especially if he could give empirical evidence or repeated tests of God. I think he would surely win the Nobel Prize for doing that. But I think the last one is probably what he's going to go for, because giving an argument for something is far easier than showing or testing that thing. More so if that thing is not showable or testable. Empirical evidence, number one, is in short the ability to see something, be it with the naked eye or with technology. Microscopes, telescopes, heat sensors, and so on allow us to see things that our naked eye alone could not. So this is the most direct way to observe something because, well, we're observing it. If you look up on a clear night when the moon is full, you have empirical evidence, one, of the moon. Direct access to knowing that it's there. Perhaps you don't know its name or what it is or what it's made of, but you know it's there, and anyone else can see it in the same way that you can. So this is direct evidence of the object or phenomenon. Black holes are known not by empirical evidence, one. They must be seen by the effects around them. Those effects are not empirical evidence of anything other than the effects themselves. The reason this needs to be clear is that far too often apologists will say that there is some sort of evidence for God and then cite some phenomenon like fine-tuning, the clockwork universe, morality, beauty of nature, and so on. And even if these things are actual, and many aren't, they are not empirical evidence of anything other than themselves. Simply put, we cannot see God. If it's a real thing, it is not visible to the eye or any technology we currently possess. What, if any, sort of repeatable test? There seems to be no test that works on any God claim as yet, and I find that odd for Christianity as it makes claims about God. It makes the claim that God is unchanging. But let's see if that holds. In 1 Kings, beginning with in chapter 18, we have a test of Yahweh versus Baal. This would be a simple experiment to set up and perform again. And if the Christian God is unchanging, then it should perform the same way. Yet, no Christian group has set about doing this test. This should be a test that we can repeat, unless God is not unchanging. But other passages say that God is not to be tested. But then again, Jesus said, anything you ask for in his name will be given to you, so there's a test, surely. Yet prayer studies have yielded results that align with what we expect from chance. It seems that if God exists, it is completely untestable. What about the possibility of a logically coherent argument? And a logically coherent argument is also called a sound and valid argument, and I just prefer the former as I feel it conveys the same meaning as the latter. I'm pretty sure that no such argument exists for any God claim. I've studied plenty of them, but perhaps there's one I haven't yet encountered. Maybe somebody is so clever with words that it will seem like they have one, and if so, then we would have to investigate this further. But it's important to note an argument is not evidence of any sort. If it was, I'd just argue that I have $1 million. That would be nice. There are many tries and attempts at arguments for God. The Kalam cosmological argument's been trotted out so many times, and it fails on both a logical and scientific level. The fine-tuning one also fails in the same categories. The moral argument fails in logical terms, and other arguments have other errors aplenty. But perhaps my opponent will surprise me with a new argument, and if not, then whatever argument he presents, if he's willing and able to change the logical fallacies when pointed out to him so that he winds up with a coherent argument, then not only will he win the debate, but I'll have to investigate the conclusion further. There is something that we do not have evidence number 1 or evidence number 2 or a test for. These things are objects of the mind. These are abstract ideas like numbers and letters. These things exist, but only in our mind and not external to the mind. You can't find the number 1. You can't locate the letter Z and nibble on it to see how it tastes. There's no repeated test that shows you that the number 8 is in fact the number 8. It's only that way because of tautology. It just is what it is by brute force of us saying that's what it is. And that defines it into existence, but only in our mind. If only we could define other things into existence outside of our mind, well, again, I would have $1 million and all problems would be cured, but that's not how things work. When you define something into existence in this way, like the letter A or the number 8, all you've done is create an object of the mind. I submit then, if God does not have any evidence 1 or 2 for it, nor any test that we can perform upon it, then God must therefore be an object of the mind. It exists in the mind, but nowhere else. I shall summarize all of this thusly. Premise 1. Everything that we know of that exists as a non-object of the mind has empirical evidence 1/2 and or a repeatable test for it. Premise 2. God does not have empirical evidence 1/2 and or a repeatable test for it. Conclusion. God exists only as an object in the mind. Lacking any empirical evidence 1/2, repeated tests, and or any logically coherent argument for the existence of God, I submit we must be skeptical. And unless and until we have one of these things, we must continue to be skeptical of the conclusions.